My good friends over at G Fuel just launched a brand new Twitch-inspired flavor called Sour Pixel Potion. If you guys want to check that out, it's available on the G Fuel website right now, and if you use code ESPRESSO, you'll get 10% off your entire order. So go check it out if you're interested. We're back on some Modern Warfare content today in the sense of talking about some things you may not have seen just yet. It's information that came out about 20 to 24 hours ago, depending on when you watch this, but it is something that also was kind of on the down low. It didn't have much attention to it initially, but it was a list of all the game modes in Modern Warfare according to the Modern Warfare PC beta game files. And so today I want to run down all this stuff here with you guys, let you know everything you need to, and talk about the absolute massive list of game modes that are found within this, what we can expect potentially at launch if this is something we'll see this full list, or what this means for the future of some modes and everything in between. So before we do, just want to give you a quick little heads up. I'm in the process of moving right now, so today, tomorrow, Tuesday, and maybe Wednesday may be a little bit different in terms of content. Of course, today is still keeping up with current content with what we have here for Modern Warfare, but if there's any massive information or something like that that comes out for Modern Warfare over the next couple of those days, it might not go up immediately just because I have some content scheduled already so that I can be completely hands-off and do all this work for moving without having to focus too much on anything else. But that said, we'll try and do our absolute best here. But anyways, to the topic at hand, the leaked game modes within Modern Warfare. This comes from the Reddit user Impala, and I'll be totally honest with you, I have absolutely no knowledge in how to actually replicate this stuff. He ends up saying this can be found by running the Modern Warfare application, creating a dump file using Task Manager, and then using a program that can read those DMP files. That is well out of my realms of expertise. I'm going to take that for what it is. As with all game code and all data dumps, I can't put the information up on screen for you guys in its raw format. I can link it down there in the description below for you guys to check out. But from these game files, we end up seeing 34 game modes, and if you count the hardcore variations also attached with the specified ones, that's 47 game modes here for this list. Those including Team Deathmatch, Survival, Showdown, Search and Destroy, Search and Rescue, Rupture, Onslaught, One of the Chamber, Kill Confirmed, Incursion, Hardpoint, Ground War, Fire Team, Free For All, Drop Zone, Defender, Demolition, All or Nothing, Breach, Invasion, Fire Mission, Assault, Arms Race, Capture the Flag, Cyber Attack, Domination, Grind, Gun Game, Headquarters, High Value Target, Infected, Reinforce, Team Juggernaut, and Gunfight. Now, the game modes that have hardcore associated with them are Team Deathmatch, Showdown, Search and Destroy, Kill Confirmed, Fire Team, Free For All, Invasion, Fire Mission, Arms Race, Cyber Attack, Domination, Headquarters, and Gunfight. 34 just core modes, 47 with hardcore included. That is a wild lineup here for what we may have on deck with Modern Warfare. Now, before we jump into the possibilities here of all these making it into the game, which, full disclosure, I don't know if that's going to be the case, and I kind of doubt it, but we'll get to that in a second. But we end up seeing a couple of things like some big returning game modes in the game files that probably have a lot of people excited. Things like Demolition, things like Drop Zone, All or Nothing, Gun Game, Infected, One in the Chamber. All of these are fan favorites and absolute classics, which would be fantastic to see again in a full capacity. But then we also have a list of game modes that we've never seen before. Things like Showdown, Onslaught, Rupture, Breach, Assault, Incursion, Invasion, Fire Mission, and High Value Target. Now, we don't have any idea what these may be, or do we? Because alongside these game modes that were found in the dumped files were actually some voiceover audio lines from the announcers, the things that they say at pivotal moments or at the very beginning or very end of the game. And this actually gives us a little bit of some insight as to what each of these could include. So we've got a couple here that we don't know of that it clears up a little bit. A lot of the other ones, though, are just game modes you've probably seen before, so you don't need much clarification on. Again, I can leave this down there in the description below for you guys to check out. But for some of the lesser known game modes, or the newer ones here potentially, we see things like Invasion mentioning a flag-based game mode. The way that I see this possibly happening is a sort of one-way CTF for both teams, where your objective is to plant your flag in the enemy base, but both teams are trying to do that. Not with one singular flag, but a singular flag for each team. So kind of making two walls of players rushing a base trying to accomplish the same thing, where it's like two forces just meeting each other in the middle. This would kind of follow the trend of what we saw cyber attack already introduced, where there's not a singular bomb, but rather two teams going for the same objective, planting back and forth between both teams' zones. So it's a little bit different than that of what would be introduced if that initial theory here is correct, but it's that slight differential that is already showcased and introduced within Modern Warfare on a mode that we've already come to know and love. Then we end up seeing things like Fire Mission. It ends up saying dominate the battlefield, slay them all, and seize the objectives, kill our enemies. It doesn't provide much clarity, to be totally honest with you, but it is something, if there is some more stuff, I'd be intrigued to hear a little bit more about what it is. The next one, though, is one that I am actually really excited for here, not only just because it showcases a lot of what is in the game files already, but it's a mode that I think is just very cool to begin with. It's called High Value Target. There's honestly a ton of audio files for this specific game mode, which I won't spend the entire time reading off every single one, but of course I'll leave it down there in the description below for you guys to check out. The main big one, though, is to hunt down their high value targets and protect your own. This I'm incredibly intrigued by. There's again a bunch of different audio files for when your high value target goes down, when you're captured, things like that. I love the idea of a defender mode, and with multiple targets potentially, I think that'd be really cool. It seems like there is a scoring based system here with this, so maybe it's the first one to take out X amount of high value targets. But regardless, I love the idea of this, and I'm hoping that this plays as well as I think it will, because that's something that could have worked very well in previous Call of Duty titles. I know that this was also a talked about thing within Blackout as potentially a very cool mode for an LTM, something like that. Whereas you had Bounty Hunter, it's kind of the inverse, where you had to protect somebody the entire time rather than just be that designated samurai. I don't know, I'm just very excited to see that one even as a possibility, let alone something that does seem to be completed more so than any other game mode with the audio files we've seen so far. We end up also seeing one called Rupture, where this tells us to locate the Juggernaut armor and break into the enemy defenses in a few subtle variations. It kind of says the same thing, but in 3 or 4 different audio lines. To me, this sounds like a really cool twist on Safeguard with the Juggernaut armor. It also seems like whenever you end up taking out that Juggernaut that is pushing towards your base, you can, as your team, reclaim that armor and then push back. So it's kind of a giant tug of war with that twist again on Safeguard, whereas the robot would then just be flipping one way or the other to which way they're gonna go. But instead of the robot, it's a Juggernaut armor that a player can control and of course then can get kills with. So that'll be really cool to see, I think, here with this. And honestly, that might be another game mode where there's a ton of streaks called in at that point, because I feel like that's just going to be a major 5-man attack on that Juggernaut where you clear one team and then the Juggernaut is left alive and he just gets taken out so fast. That'll be a really interesting one to play around with as well, and I'm definitely hoping that that one makes the cut. But that said, talking about the game modes overall, one big thing that I'm sure that a lot of people will come to ask about is realism. There was no realism on that list that we talked about here with this. But the thing is I don't think that there needs to be. Realism is an umbrellaed variation of play, meaning that it won't be listed as its own game mode, but instead is its own category. So we had core and hardcore listed here with this one, but I'm assuming that realism will also be for various modes. Likely not all of them, like how we saw with hardcore not encompassing every single game mode. There's not a hardcore variation for each of those, but I'd imagine that realism kind of falls in line with those hardcore modes, where you have realism TDM, you have realism search and destroy. I don't see Infinity Ward making this game with a huge emphasis on realism marketing, having it in the beta, playable, and something that I think a lot of people did enjoy, at least from what I saw, and then dropping it entirely. I don't think that's going to happen, so I would imagine that realism is there. Doesn't seem likely that they'd just get rid of it. So don't worry too much on that end. But then the big question outside of that is how many of these will be at launch? Will they all be at launch? Personally, I highly doubt that. Modern Warfare 3, to my knowledge, is the game that had the most game modes outside of this potential list of 47, and Modern Warfare 3 only had 27 game modes, including hardcore modes. So a jump from 27 to 47 is quite a big one, which to me makes it seem a little unlikely, especially given that in recent years we've had that stress on not wanting to thin the player pools. The more game modes you introduce, the more schisms and forks in the road players have to potentially match up with other players. So that means that gradually as time goes on, things like TDM obviously will have more players in it, but then your game modes like CTF will have worsening connections because there's a lesser player pool in that game mode. One thing that could combat this is that quick play, where you have a number of different game modes thrown into one selection queue. So you have, say, CTF, TDM, search and destroy, cyber attack, and maybe kill confirmed. You have those all thrown into one, and then there also comes into that data mined piece of information where there's going to be mode voting as well as map voting. So that could be something that plays into it, and maybe we do see all of these, but to me 47 is just a bit too much of a stretch compared to what we've seen beforehand for everything all laid out at once. My thoughts coming down to it is I think these are going to be two things: LTMs and then a couple of cut game modes here in this list as well from the data mined information. Now, limited time modes aren't something new. We had those within World War II, we had a ton in Black Ops 4, and they could be a number of different things. They could be event specific. We see that there are going to be seasons and events within Modern Warfare based off of that behind the scenes look from the Hollywood Reporter that we talked about a couple of days ago. There could be weekend warfare style events where it just pops up for a weekend, and that might be something of comparable timetables to Nuketown 24/7 or something like that within Black Ops 4. Those things could be just things that are on rotation. They could be seasonal. They could just pop up whenever, and that could be some of these game modes. Things like your all or nothing, things like your infected, your one in the chamber, your gun game. Those truthfully are very niche game modes that are usually just put into party game mosh pits because there's dedicated fan bases for each, but a large populace of the player count doesn't really ever touch them. So whether or not they get introduced as featured game modes or if they're all added in, that's really up for time to tell, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're only limited time modes. Additionally, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these are cut game modes. The one that stands out to me the most is Search and Rescue. We saw Search and Rescue introduced within Call of Duty Ghosts. It was met with mixed reception, but whenever we have things like Cyber Attack, which is essentially Search and Rescue but with a slight extra twist on it with that singular bomb going back and forth, and you'll still have Search and Destroy in the game as well, I don't really see the need for a third variant of Search and Destroy. So my thinking is that that might be something of legacy code. It's just been there in the game files, the base builds for a long while, but isn't going to make its way into the main game. And that could be said about a couple of different things. Maybe these are internal code names for game modes that we never saw and just may never see. So we'll have to wait for time to tell, but it certainly is interesting to see some of these, of course, fan favorites in the game files, some game modes that look absolutely fantastic, and some new ones like High Value Target and Rupture, which look to be a ton of fun. So that's where we're going to wrap it up. Want to let you guys know about all of this here and keep you guys in the loop for what you can expect here, because right now we're kind of in that weird period where we're still waiting for a little bit more information to finalize for Modern Warfare and then jump into the full pre-release festivities and getting into everything. But there's also not a lot being released right now. The next week or two is kind of a limbo period, so we'll see how this all works out, but want to keep you guys in the loop with what's out there for right now. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What game mode are you hoping makes it into Modern Warfare? Any of these that we discussed that you're really looking forward to? Whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, but hopefully enjoy the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below, and of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare. We're going to keep you guys up to date with absolutely everything you need to know for everything going into the launch and even then after. So hit the subscribe button if you guys are new. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, there's the best place to get connected outside of YouTube. I live on both those. If you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. But let's get out of the way. Thank you guys all so much for watching. My name is Espresso. We'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.